2 years. That's how long I had been with Nathan. 2 years of late-night calls, inside jokes, and long-distance promises. 2 years of believing we were building something real. And in one night, one stupid random Google search, it all fell apart. I met Nathan in a Discord server for indie horror games. He was funny, smart, easy to talk to. And unlike most guys online, he wasn't pushy. He never asked for nudes. Never got weird if I didn't reply right away. He just made me laugh. And over time it became more than that. We never officially put a label on things, but it was obvious. He'd call me before bed, send good morning texts. We made plans. Someday when we meet in person, I'll take you to that ramen place you love. When we get a place together, we're getting a cat. Non-negotiable. We even had a playlist. A fucking playlist. And I believed it. All of it. It wasn't perfect. There were little things. Tiny red flags. Nathan never video called. I used to joke about it. Dude, are you secretly a 60-year-old man? And he'd always laugh. I just hate cameras. Makes me feel weird. I let it slide. Because deep down I trusted him. Until I saw the forum post, it was pure accident. I was looking for an old horror game Nathan had recommended, scrolling through a random message board. And that's when I saw the thread, a 4-year-old post, titled, "The Longest Game, My 2-Year Fake Relationship Experiment." I clicked, and my stomach dropped. The post was written by some anonymous user. They called themselves Spectre, and they were bragging, detailing how they had lured someone into a fake relationship for 2 years just to see if they could. It started as a joke, just catfishing for fun. But after a while, I realized something. I could say anything, and she'd believe me. 2 years in, and she still doesn't know. It's hilarious. I even made her a playlist. How romantic, right? I stopped breathing. A playlist. That was our thing. But it could have been a coincidence, right? Until I read the next line. She thinks I hate video calls, tells people I'm just camera shy. I felt physically sick. This wasn't random. This was me. I scrolled faster, heart slamming. And then I saw it. A screenshot of a conversation. Blurred name, but the messages were mine, word for word. My stomach twisted. I was reading my own relationship from a stranger's perspective. Every moment I thought was real. It had been scripted, planned, a fucking game. I checked the account that had posted it, deleted. No way to trace it. I went back to Discord. Nathan's profile? Still there. Still online. Still talking to me like nothing was wrong. I stared at the screen, at the message he'd just sent. Nathan. What's up? You okay? Like he could tell something was off. Like he was waiting to see if I knew. I didn't reply. Didn't block him. Because I knew what would happen next. He'd disappear. And if I let him do that, I'd never get any answers. So I did something different. I played along. For one last night, I acted normal. Laughed at his jokes. Let him think he still had control. Then, just before midnight, I sent him a link. A screenshot of the forum post. A single message. Tell me the truth. He saw it immediately. The typing bubble appeared. Then disappeared. Then, Nathan. Are you serious? I didn't respond. Another pause. Then, Nathan. I was gonna tell you. A lie. Nathan. I didn't mean to hurt you. Another lie. Nathan. You weren't supposed to find out. The only honest thing he'd ever said. I blocked him. Deleted everything. But the worst part? I still don't know who he was. No real name. No real face. No real anything. Just 2 years of my life wasted on a ghost. When I finally got the address, I thought, this is it. I'm finally gonna meet her. Chloe and I had been talking for 6 months. 6 months of late-night calls, inside jokes, and those stupid flirty arguments over which of us would be the big spoon. She was perfect. Witty, sarcastic, just the right amount of nerdy. And beautiful. Like, too beautiful. Long dark hair, big green eyes, a perfect, almost porcelain face. But I didn't overthink it. because for the first time in a long time, I was happy. She was the one who suggested we meet. "You should come over," she texted out of nowhere. "Tonight? Yeah, I think it's time." She sent me an address. No hesitation, no build-up, just, here it is. And yeah, part of me was nervous. But mostly, I was excited. I drove an hour to see her, and when I pulled up to the house, my excitement turned to confusion. Because the place was empty, not just quiet, abandoned. It wasn't a normal house, not a cozy suburban home, not some cute little apartment. This place was old, rotting, like it had been left to die. The windows were boarded up. The front door was covered in graffiti. The lawn was just dirt and weeds. No car in the driveway, no lights inside, just darkness. I double-checked the address. It was correct. What the hell? I sat in my car for a minute, debating. Maybe it was a joke, a prank. Maybe Chloe wasn't real. Maybe some asshole had set this up just to mess with me. I sighed, unlocking my phone. "Hey, I think you gave me the wrong address?" Nothing. No typing bubble. No response. I exhaled, shaking my head. Of course. I put the car in reverse. I was about to drive off when my phone buzzed. A new message. From Chloe. And when I read it, I felt my stomach drop. "You look even better in person." My mouth went dry. I whipped my head around, scanning the street. Nobody. The neighborhood was dead. No people. No cars. No lights in the other houses. Just me. And the house. I turned back to my phone. Another message. "You're not leaving, are you?" A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't told her I was leaving. Slowly, I looked back at the house. At the boarded-up windows. The peeling paint. The broken shutters. And then, as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it. Through a gap in the boards, in the second-story window. A face. Pale. Motionless. Staring right at me. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My phone buzzed again. "Come inside." I felt something shift deep in my gut. A primal, instinctive fear. Like some part of my brain had just put the pieces together and realized I was in danger. I didn't respond. I didn't look back at the window. I just threw the car into drive and floored it. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station miles away. I pulled over, hands shaking as I tried to catch my breath. And then I did something I should have done months ago. I reverse searched her photos, and there she was. Not Chloe, not some normal girl from Tinder, but a stock image model. Her face was plastered all over random skincare ads, fake Instagram accounts, old magazine spreads. Chloe wasn't real. She never was. I blocked the number, deleted my Tinder, tried to forget, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 2 nights later, when I got a new text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "You shouldn't have left me waiting." Attached was a photo, not of the house, not of the window, but of me, sitting in my car, taken from inside the house. Looking back, I should have known from the start. He was too perfect. Not in an obvious way. He wasn't some billionaire world traveler with abs sculpted by the gods. No, he was perfect for me. The kind of perfect that felt familiar. His name was Jake. We matched on a Thursday. His profile wasn't anything flashy. A few casual pictures, a bio that was funny without trying too hard. Graphic designer, bookworm, low-key sushi addict, looking for someone who won't judge my Spotify playlists. It was exactly the kind of humor I liked, the kind that felt natural, effortless. And when we started chatting, it was even better. Jake got my jokes. He knew my favorite movies. He even threw in an obscure quote from a book I'd mentioned offhandedly in one of my old tweets, one I barely even remembered talking about. I felt an instant connection. I had no idea I was talking to a ghost from my past. The first few weeks were amazing. We talked every day. No weird lulls, no dry conversations. It felt easy, like I'd known him for years. which, as it turned out, wasn't far from the truth. The first red flag came during a late-night conversation. We were texting about dream vacations. I mentioned how I'd always wanted to visit Japan, but I was nervous about traveling solo. Jake responded immediately. "Oh yeah, I remember you posted about that back in 2019. You said you were scared of getting lost in Tokyo." I stared at the message, because I never told him that. Not in our texts, not in our conversations. I had posted about it once, 4 years ago, on a private Twitter account. I brushed it off at first. Maybe he just had a really good memory. Maybe he'd seen it before I locked my account. I didn't want to be paranoid. But after that, it kept happening. Little things. Stuff I'd posted years ago. "Didn't you say your childhood dog was named Scooter? I remember you had a phase where you dyed your hair pink. Looked cool, BTW. You're not really a coffee person, right? You always order chai lattes. Always. Not 'you told me this before.' Not 'I remember you saying.' Just 'you always.' Like he already knew me. Like he'd been watching me for years." The breaking point came when I sent him a voice message. I was just rambling about my day, nothing serious. But after I sent it, Jake didn't respond right away. Instead, 3 minutes later, I got this. "Jake, your voice sounds exactly the same." I frowned. "As what?" "Jake, as I imagined it would." Something about that sentence made my skin crawl. Not as I remember, not as I expected, as I imagined. I did something I should have done weeks ago. I reverse searched his photos, and sure enough, they weren't his. They belonged to some random guy's old Flickr account, a guy who lived in Canada. My stomach dropped. I wasn't talking to Jake. I was talking to someone else, someone who'd been following me for years. I didn't text him back. Instead, I scrolled through my own social media, trying to piece together who he really was. I checked my Instagram, my Twitter, even my old Tumblr, and then I saw it. A username I didn't recognize, one that had liked hundreds of my posts over the years. It was a random account, no profile picture, no post, just a generic handle. But when I clicked it, it took me to a blank page. The account had just been deleted. My heart pounded. I went back to Tinder. Jake's profile? Gone. The messages? Deleted. It was like he'd never existed. I blocked his number, locked down my socials, made everything private. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching. And a week later, I got proof. A new Instagram request. No posts, no profile picture. Just a single message. "Still love chai lattes?" I didn't respond, didn't block him, because I knew what would happen next. He'd just make another account, and another, and another. Because he'd already been doing it for years, and I had no idea how many times he'd started over. The first time I saw him, I thought nothing of it. Just another random match. His name was Ethan. Tall, brown hair, sharp jawline, attractive in a normal, familiar way. But that was the problem. He looked too familiar. Like someone I used to know. Like someone I should have recognized, but I couldn't place him, not at first. We started chatting, and he was good. Not in the fake, perfect way some guys are. Just easygoing, effortless. He asked about my job, my hobbies, our hometown. I think we might have gone to the same high school, he said. And that's when it clicked. That's why he looked familiar. I didn't remember him exactly, but something about his face tugged at an old memory. I squinted at his pictures, trying to place him. He looked like the kind of guy who would have played varsity football, dated the head cheerleader, peaked at 17. Maybe we'd had a class together. Maybe he was a couple of years older. I couldn't remember. But when I asked him what year he graduated, he dodged the question. I brushed it off. Not everyone likes talking about high school. We kept texting, made plans to meet for coffee, and then, the night before our date, I did something I should have done earlier. I went digging. I searched his full name, Ethan Carter, scrolled through old yearbooks, and then I found him. Senior class photo, 2017. Same face, same smirk, same exact picture he used on Tinder. But underneath his name, a date, 2000 to 2019. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. He'd been dead for 5 years. I tried to breathe, tried to think logically. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe some random guy had stolen his pictures, not realizing he was stealing the face of a dead man. But then I checked the obituary, and my stomach dropped. Because Ethan hadn't just died. He'd been murdered. The official story, unsolved case. Found in his car, abandoned on a rural road. No signs of struggle, no known suspects. And the part that sent a chill through my entire body. The car doors were locked from the inside, like he had been waiting for someone. I went back to Tinder. Ethan's profile was still there. I stared at the messages. Everything about him had been so normal, so real. And then, as if he knew I had found out, a new message popped up. Ethan, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. I blocked him, deleted my account, didn't sleep that night. And when morning came, I checked again. Not only was his profile gone, but his messages were completely erased. Like he'd never existed. Like I had imagined the whole thing. And maybe I could have convinced myself I had. When I was 15, growing up in a small town in North Dakota felt like living in a fishbowl. Everyone knew everyone, and if you didn't fit the mold, you stuck out like a sore thumb. I was the weird kid into horror movies, punk rock, and sketching eerie landscapes while everyone else cared about football and who was taking who to the next school dance. The internet became my escape, my way of finding people who got me. This was back in the days of AOL Instant Messenger, where you could strike up a conversation with a stranger just by searching for shared interests. One night I got a message from a guy named Brandon. He was 17, said he lived a few towns over, and was also into punk music. We clicked immediately. We'd spend hours chatting about bands, movies, and how much we hated high school. He told me his parents had kicked him out for being gay, and he was living with his older brother. That made me trust him even more. I had only recently started coming to terms with my own sexuality, and felt like he was the first person who understood me. After a couple of weeks, Brandon suggested we meet up. I knew my parents wouldn't approve, so I told them he was a mutual friend of someone they knew. When he pulled up in an old beat-up truck, I was relieved. He actually looked like his pictures. Messy brown hair, an easy smile, and a leather jacket covered in band patches. He wasn't some creepy old man, which back then was my biggest fear about meeting an internet friend. We spent the evening driving around, getting burgers, and browsing a record store before going to see a movie. It was one of the best nights I'd had in a long time. I didn't want it to end, so I invited him to crash at my place. I had a pull-out bed, so it wasn't weird. We watched a horror movie and eventually fell asleep. At around 2 a.m., there was a loud knock on the front door. My parents answered it, and standing there was a police officer, someone my dad knew since he was a retired cop. Confused, I got up and went to the living room, where I heard the officer say they had received an anonymous tip about someone in our house, communicating with a wanted predator. My stomach dropped. I turned and looked at Brandon, who was still half asleep on the pull-out bed. My parents immediately checked my computer, and within minutes, my internet privileges were gone. I insisted Brandon wasn't some predator. He was just a guy I met online. My parents didn't listen. The next day, I skipped school, and Brandon picked me up. We were driving around talking about how ridiculous the whole thing was, when a car behind us suddenly slammed on its brakes, did a sharp U-turn, and started tailgating us. Then, the honking started. I turned to Brandon, expecting him to be just as confused, but he was white-knuckling the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. "Who is that?" I asked. He didn't answer. The car behind us sped up, swerving into the opposite lane to drive next to us. I turned my head and saw a man, mid-30s, red-faced, eyes bulging. His rage was palpable. Then, he swerved again, trying to push us off the road. "Brandon, what the hell is going on?" I yelled. He finally pulled over, and I followed his lead, stepping out of the truck. The man stormed toward me, his fist raised like he was about to hit me. He stopped inches from my face, shaking with fury. "You need to stay away from him," he spat, "if you want to live to see tomorrow." I was too stunned to speak. The man turned to Brandon. "Get in the truck, now." Brandon hesitated but eventually obeyed. I stood there, watching as the two drove off, my mind racing. Who was that man? What did he mean? And why did Brandon look so terrified? I didn't say a word to my parents when I got home. I just locked myself in my room and cried. I felt like an idiot, like the biggest fool in the world for trusting someone I barely knew. But it didn't end there. A few days later, my mom came home early from work. She had a message on the answering machine. I played it and my blood ran cold. The voice on the other end claimed to be from my school's administration, asking for my mom's work number. But in the middle of the message, my sister had picked up the phone, and the conversation continued. I listened as the man, whose voice I immediately recognized as the one from that day on the road, told my mom exactly who I'd been hanging around with. Then the FBI showed up. They told me Brandon wasn't 17, he was 23, and he wasn't living with his brother. He was on the run. He had been accused of molesting 2 kids, one as young as 10. I felt sick. They asked me to testify against him in court. I said yes. The other victims' families were too embarrassed to come forward, so it was up to me. Months later, just before the trial, I got a late-night call. It was from Brandon's so-called older brother. But this time, his voice was different, smoother, more controlled. He asked if I was okay, if I had been doing all right, and then he started flirting with me. I hung up. He called again, and again. I never picked up. Brandon took a plea deal. He got 1 year in prison. That was it. By the time I turned 17, I had moved on. At least I thought I had. Then one day I got an instant message from an unknown screen name. It was short and chilling. "I know where you live." Then another. "Nice car." And another. "See you soon." I blocked the accounts, but new ones popped up. The messages became more detailed, describing my clothes, where I went after school, what time I got home. I printed them out and took them to the police. They filed a report, but I never heard from Brandon again. I don't know where he is now, and honestly, I don't want to know. I just hope, wherever he is, he's nowhere near another kid who just wanted a friend. I never had much luck with dating apps, but when I matched with Emily, something about her felt different. Her profile wasn't like the usual overly filtered selfies and basic one-liners. She had these candid, almost off-guard photos, laughing mid-conversation, a blurry shot of her on a beach, a black and white image of her sitting by a window, deep in thought. It made her seem real. Her bio was short. "Not here for games. If we vibe, we vibe." And man, did we vibe. She was funny, sharp, and had this effortless way of making me feel like we'd known each other forever. She told me she had just moved to town for work and was still trying to figure things out. We texted constantly, swapping stories, late-night thoughts, and stupid jokes. When she finally suggested meeting in person, I didn't hesitate. She picked a quiet little bar near the waterfront, said it was her favorite spot, a hidden gem she had stumbled upon. When I got there, I was early, too early. I grabbed a drink, found a booth, and waited. Then I got a text. "Emily. Running a little late, just got out of the shower, be there soon." No big deal. I ordered another drink. 15 minutes passed, then 20. I texted her again. "No rush, just checking in." She read it immediately. No response. I sighed, figuring she was getting dressed or on her way. Another 20 minutes, then an hour. That's when I got another text. Unknown number. "How's the drink?" My stomach dropped. I looked around, suddenly hyper-aware of my surroundings. The bar wasn't crowded, maybe 8 or 9 other people scattered around. No one was looking at me. I typed back, "Who is this?" No answer. Then another text came in. Unknown number. "You have good taste. You always order an old-fashioned when you're nervous." My heart pounded, because that was true. I had mentioned it in passing once as a joke. If I order an old-fashioned, it means I'm either on a date or spiraling. But I had told that to Emily. I stood up, scanned the room. Nothing. Just a couple of regulars and a bartender who looked half asleep. Another text. Unknown number. "You don't recognize me, do you?" I froze. I typed back, "What do you mean?" A photo came through. Of me. Sitting right there in that booth. Taken from inside the bar. I shot up from my seat, my pulse racing. My eyes darted around, scanning every face, searching for someone staring. Someone holding up a phone. But no one was watching me. Then, one final text. Unknown. Number. "I was never coming tonight, but I've been waiting a long time to see you again." I left. Didn't even close my tab. Just bolted out the door and sprinted to my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the keys in the ignition. That night I deleted the app, changed my number, blocked every unknown contact. But 2 weeks later, I got a friend request on Facebook. No profile picture, no mutual friends. Just a name I hadn't heard in over 10 years. My ex-girlfriend. The one who had disappeared after high school. The one I thought had moved away. And the message attached? Miss me? Some people fall in love with looks. I fell in love with a voice. It wasn't just pretty, it was perfect. Soft, warm, comforting in a way I didn't know I needed. Every night we talked for hours, and for the first time in years I felt like someone truly understood me. Until the night her voice glitched, and I realized I had never been talking to a woman at all. Her name was Lily. We met on a dating app for introverts. Her profile was simple. A single picture, a short bio. "Good listener. Night owl. Tell me a secret?" I like that. No fake enthusiasm, no "I love hiking and tacos" cliché. Just genuine, quiet warmth. So I messaged her, and from the very first response, it wasn't her looks that drew me in. It was the way she spoke. Her voice was soothing, the kind that made you feel safe, like curling up under a blanket on a rainy night. She spoke softly, always measured, always patient, like she was really listening, like she knew me, and maybe that's why I trusted her so quickly. Our calls became a nightly ritual. We talked about everything: work stress, childhood memories, the things we never told anyone else. She never rushed to fill silences, never spoke over me. She just let me exist. And after a while, I stopped questioning it. Stopped wondering why she never wanted to video call. Stopped worrying that she only had one photo. Because I was happy. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't lonely. Until the night she laughed too hard. And the voice glitched. It was late. I was lying in bed, half asleep, listening to her talk. She made a joke. Something dumb. Something about my horrible taste in movies. I laughed. She laughed. And then her voice broke. Like a speaker short-circuiting. A low, crackling distortion. And underneath it, a second voice. Not soft. Not warm. Deep. Male. My heart stopped. The glitch lasted less than a second. Then Lily kept talking like nothing had happened. Like she didn't just break reality for a moment. I sat up. "Say that again?" I asked. "Say what?" she replied, her voice smooth and perfect. "What you just said. Repeat it." A pause, then, "Are you okay?" I swallowed hard. The glitch was in my head. Had to be. I was tired hearing things. But something inside me was screaming. I had to be sure. "Video call me," I said. Silence. Then, "You know I don't like cameras." My stomach twisted. "Just once. I need to see you." Another pause. Then reluctantly, "Okay." The call rang. I held my breath. The screen lit up. Pitch black. "Lily?" I whispered. No response, just breathing. Slow, steady, controlled. I squinted, trying to make out anything in the darkness. Then, finally, a sound. Not her normal voice. Not soft, not warm. A whisper. Deep. Male. You were never supposed to notice. I ended the call immediately, blocked her number, Deleted the app. Tried to erase her from my life. I thought I was in love talking to my dream girl this whole time. Nope. This whole time I was talking to a deranged man. When I was 16, I was addicted to chat rooms. This was back in the early 2000s when the internet still felt like the Wild West. Before social media, before catfishing was common knowledge. I was just a lonely kid in a small town in Idaho, desperate for connection. That's how I met her. Her name was Lily. She was 17, lived in Washington, and according to the grainy photos she sent me, she was gorgeous. Dark hair, soft smile, eyes that seemed to understand me even through a pixelated screen. We bonded over music, late-night conversations, and the shared misery of teenage life. She got me in a way no one else did. We talked every day for months. Eventually, she suggested we meet. I was thrilled. She told me her family had a cabin near my town and that they'd be visiting for the weekend. It felt like fate. She gave me an address, and we made plans for me to come over Friday night. The house was deep in the woods, far from any neighbors. When I arrived, something felt off. There were no cars in the driveway, no lights on inside, just a dark, quiet cabin in the middle of nowhere. But I was young and stupid, so I knocked anyway. A man answered. He was old, maybe late 40s, early 50s, balding, thin, and wearing a smile that made my skin crawl. "You must be Danny," he said. "Lily's been so excited to meet you." I tried to step back, to make an excuse, but he moved fast, grabbing my arm and yanking me inside. The door slammed shut behind me. That's when I saw the setup. A laptop open on a desk, chat messages still on the screen. A pile of women's clothing, teenagers' clothing, neatly folded on the couch. A camera mounted on a tripod, aimed directly at the center of the room. I fought like hell. I kicked, screamed, clawed at his arms. He was strong, but I was desperate. Somehow, I broke free, sprinting for the door. He grabbed the back of my hoodie, yanking so hard I thought my neck would snap. But the fabric tore, and I stumbled onto the porch. I didn't stop running, not when I hit the dirt road, not when I reached my car, not until I was home, shaking so badly I could barely turn the key in my front door. I never told my parents, never told anyone. I deleted everything, our chats, the photos, even my email account. I wanted to forget. I wanted to believe it had never happened. But a week later I got an email. No subject, no text, just a photo. It was me, standing on that porch, right before I ran. I moved states the next year, changed my number, changed everything. But sometimes I still check my email late at night just to be sure. And every now and then I get a message from an unknown sender. No text, just a photo. A blurry picture of me, taken from a distance. I met Rachel through a dating app last fall. She was stunning. Red hair, green eyes, and this quiet, effortless confidence in her pictures that made her stand out from the usual endless scroll of profiles. Her bio was simple. Sarcasm, coffee, and road trips. Looking for something real. We hit it off immediately. She was quick-witted, fun, and had the kind of dry humor that made even the most boring conversations interesting. She told me she was 26, just a year younger than me, and worked as a freelance photographer. The idea of dating someone artistic intrigued me. We texted constantly. She'd send me snippets of her day, photos of random street art, coffee shop interiors, and once, a shot of the ocean at sunset that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I was hooked. So when she suggested we meet, I didn't hesitate. She picked the spot, some trendy bar downtown I'd never been to before. I was excited, nervous, ready to finally see her in person. But Rachel never showed up. At first, I figured she was running late. Then, after 15 minutes, I shot her a text. No response. Another 10 minutes passed. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I was annoyed but mostly confused. This wasn't like her. We had talked just that morning. There was no reason for her to ghost me now. I decided to wait a little longer. That's when I saw her. Or at least, I thought I did. Across the street, a woman with long red hair stood just outside a dimly lit storefront. She wasn't facing me, but something about her posture made me pause. I texted her again. This time, I saw the woman across the street reach into her pocket. My phone vibrated. Rachel. Sorry, can't make it. Rain check? I stared at my screen, then at the woman. She still wasn't looking at me, but she was holding her phone, thumb hovering over the screen like she was waiting for me to reply. I don't know why, but a chill ran down my spine. I didn't text back. Instead, I stood up, threw some cash on the table, and walked out of the bar. I kept my eyes on her as I moved, half expecting her to turn and acknowledge me. She didn't. She just walked away, disappeared down a side street. That should have been the end of it. But the next morning, I woke up to a message. Unknown number. You looked good last night. My stomach dropped. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Another text came in. Unknown number. That bar isn't really your scene though, is it? I blocked the number. Told myself it was just some weird prank. Maybe Rachel was messing with me. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, a week later, I got another message. A photo this time. It was of me, taken from outside my apartment. At night. I moved the next month, changed my number, deleted every dating app I had. But sometimes, late at night, I still get this creeping feeling, like someone's watching. And when I check my phone, I swear for just a second, I see those 3 little dots typing, then they disappear. You ever meet someone who just gets you? Someone who makes you feel seen in a way no one else ever has? That was her. We met on a niche dating forum, one of those places for people who hate dating apps but still want to connect with someone. Her name was Jess. She was witty, sarcastic, and just the right amount of flirty. We talked about everything. Books, late-night conspiracy theories, bad exes, all the little things you usually hide from people at first. It felt real. I remember the first time I thought, wow, this might actually be something. I was having a rough day, just completely over life, and out of nowhere she sent me a song. No context, no thinking of you message, just a link. I put my headphones on and hit play. The lyrics hit like a gut punch. It was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. That kind of thing kept happening. She always knew when to check in, always knew what to say. After a couple of months, we started talking about meeting up. She wasn't local, she lived a few states away, but she hinted that she'd be willing to make the trip. I was all in. I wanted this to be real. Then she ghosted, just like that. No fight, no explanation, just silence. I messaged her a few times trying to figure out if I'd said something wrong. Nothing. A week passed, then 2. I started to get that sick feeling in my gut, the one where you know something's off but you don't have proof. That's when I made the biggest mistake of my life. I did a reverse image search of her profile picture. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I'd find out she was catfishing me, some bored housewife or insecure dude using a fake picture. I could have handled that. But what I found? It wasn't just one fake profile. There were dozens, the same face, the same name, but different ages, different cities, different stories, a trail of identities that stretched back years. My stomach dropped. I started digging deeper, searching every username she'd ever used. That's when I found them, a private forum hidden behind layers of password-protected pages. It took me hours, but I got in. The first thing I saw was a thread titled, Case Study Number 42, Psychological Manipulation Through Digital Intimacy. I felt like I was going to throw up. The thread was about me. Post after post detailing everything, my texts, my reactions, my responses to their little experiments. They had logs of our conversations, analyzing my emotions like I was some kind of lab rat. They, not her. I wasn't talking to a person. I was talking to a group. A collective of anonymous strangers who had been toying with me, pushing buttons to see how I'd react, seeing how long they could keep me hooked, studying my behaviors. And I wasn't the only one, there were others. Other threads, other case studies. They had been running this game for years, luring people in, making them feel seen, making them fall in love, only to pull the rug out at the perfect moment and watch them spiral. I shut my laptop, heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out. I wanted to scream, to message someone, to tell the world what I'd found. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, I just found out I've been emotionally manipulated by a secret online cult running social experiments? Who would believe me? I sat in the dark for hours, staring at my phone, waiting for a message that would never come. And then, at exactly 3:42 a.m., a new email appeared in my inbox. No subject, no sender name, just one line of text. You were our favorite. I deleted my account that night. Every profile, every message, gone. But sometimes, late at night, when my phone buzzes, I still hesitate before checking. Because deep down, I know they're still watching.